Call this meeting to order at 6:30. And we'll begin with the singing of O Canada. Please rise. Please be seated. We'll move on to number 3 on the agenda. Any declaration of interest or general nature thereof, please state it now. Seeing none, we'll move to number 4, which is the consent agenda, and it's the adoption and or receipt of minutes. So moved by Councillor Mabey, seconded by Councillor Fody, that the February 3rd, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, February 10th, 2020 Council meeting minutes be adopted as circulated/amended, and that the January 28th, 2020 Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes be received and filed. Any discussion on these minutes as circulated? Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, carried. Okay, moving on to staff reports. So the motion that is coming forward is moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Mabey, that the Council approve the staff reports as presented at the March 2nd, 2020 meeting. Discussion on this motion. It includes a number of reports. Lyndhurst Bridge, private road grants, operations, all the tender results. Is there anything anybody needs to bring up at this point in time? Deputy Mayor Lackey, and then Councillor Mabey, and then Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, one of the issues on here is the award tender OPS 2020 -007, which is the lifting system for the trucks. Well, I understand there's lots of different things that need to be done with the trucks as far as maintenance. I don't see the value in these lifts. It's a lot of money. We don't even have a mechanic on site. So who are we getting to go underneath these trucks once they're lifted? It seems to me that, and I'll look to some of my colleagues, that if you have a creeper, you don't even need a creeper, to be honest with you. You can get under most of these. They are dumps, so you can lift the dump and grease the drive axles and, you know, the spring shackles. You can grease pretty much most of the truck without having it lifted up.
I'll recognize Councillor Fody and then Councillor Mabey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank you to Deputy Mayor. This was an item I was going to bring forward myself. I know I spoke in favor of this last week at the Committee of the Whole, and I've got to quote our mayor, a sober second thought, in the sense that it's a $50,000 wish plus. It's not a necessary item at this point. I'm not saying in some distant down the way we could perhaps look at this again. But I think more importantly, right now, the condition of our roads in this township are at maybe as low a standard as they've been in a long, long time. I know that's weather related to some degree, but I think the $50,000 we're looking at here could be much more utilized on our roads, and I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor Maybe?
I'd actually come back to the Lyndhurst Bridge myself, but if we wanted to finish that one topic.
So the motion that's on the floor is to approve the staff reports as presented at the March 2nd meeting. So I guess based on the comments made by the Deputy Mayor and the Councillor Fody, we would have to amend the acceptance of the staff reports to not include that or to defer that purchase. I'm assuming, Madam Clerk, that would be correct. Okay, so there's a need for an amendment to this motion as it is presented to defer the purchase of the lifts. Deputy Mayor, is that what you're looking to do? Is that the intent of what you're asking?
Most certainly. Thank you.
Okay, okay. And second by Councillor Fody. Okay. So which one is it? Oh, we'll vote on the amendment. So the amendment is to defer the purchase of list OPS 2020-007. That motion is made by the Deputy Mayor Lackey and seconded by Councillor Fody. Any discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment as presented? All those opposed? Carried. Okay. Now we're back to the original motion for the rest of the staff reports. So, Councillor, maybe you have a question about the Lyndhurst Bridge.
Yes, as much as I certainly support the Heritage Committee coming forward and you know, wanting to ensure that the beauty of the crossing is maintained and can be viewed by all, I still come back to the safety of our community in that area and all the events that happen in Lyndhurst, and that we do need to try to move forward as quickly as we can to resolve this and make a safer passage over that waterway. I just feel the safety factor can almost outweigh anything else if you really pushed hard on this one, and I would like to see it moving forward maybe at a faster pace than it is to actually resolve and get safe passage for pedestrian, bicycle, strollers, children, whatever. Thank you.
So that was just a point of discussion, no changes to the report. Any other comments to be made about any of the staff reports as presented, included in this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the main motion, which the council is to approve the staff reports as presented at the March 2nd, 2020 meeting and to defer the purchase of the lifts included in OPS 2020-007. All those in favor of the motion as it's in its entirety? All those opposed? Carried. There we go. Okay, so we're moving along to information items. There was an additional information item report that came forward, two of them. Oh, sorry, two that were inadvertently missed the first round, and one was in regards to radon gas. Information in regards to radon gas coming from our Chief Building Official, Paul Nixon, and the Director of Planning, Marnie Venditti. So it's in regards to providing information to council regarding radon gas and the 100 radon test kit challenge. So that information has been provided to council and will be posted on our website. As well, the additional report by Ms. Goodman, Director of Community and Business Services, was in regards to the number of events that are upcoming, just to make council aware of a number of these events, as well as it will be published to the public. So just in a more cohesive and concise report. Sorry, I didn't put this on the floor, did I? I apologize. Moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the information items be received and filed. So 2 of those reports were added this evening. Is there any questions, or are there any information items you would like to pull and discuss? Councillor Grau.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship, regarding the information item of the Village of Merrickville Wolford request for resolution support, I would just like to point out that I think it's an excellent letter, and it is concerning provincially significant wetlands, how they get mapped, and it would be behooving the governments to have a little more public input into that, and I think that is a very worthwhile concept. Thank you.
So I have impetus to pull that that information item for support. Councillor Fody, you have another?
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the items I had was just what Councillor Grell brought up. I think this is a well-worded piece of documentation that Merrickville Wolford has put forward. I think we should support it. I'll leave it at that for now, unless you want to move on. I do have one other. Okay. Also, a letter from the town of Boostlynch regarding water, safe water drinking. I think that should be supported as well. It's equally well worded.
Any other of the information items to be pulled for support? Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, the health unit, their immunization plan that and the support that the immunization should occur, and their statements stating that anybody who doesn't have it will not be allowed in school. Again, with the coronavirus and how that's moving around our globe, it certainly does point out that immunization and controlling these diseases is probably a good thing for our way of life to try to mitigate any situations. And I know most of us around the table have had shots over our lifetime that have helped us sustain the lifestyle we have. So it's always good to continue that. I did have also the support for all the ones that have gone forward already. And just looking through my notes, 2 seconds, yeah. So I'm good there. Thank you.
Councillor Olkey. Are you looking to support it, or are you looking for us to do our own? Okay. The Todd signs that I believe that you're referring to, they vary in cost depending on the size of the sign and where they're located. Ms. Goodman, do you have anything specific to that you can talk of? I know the Delta Mill, that was a huge issue for the Delta Mill because it's a not-for-profit, and one of the main reasons that people visit is the Todd sign that's on the highway that directs the traffic down to them, and it was out of their boundary and fundraising. So unless you have anything more specific, Ms. Goodman.
Okay, pardon me, and thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I do understand and I don't know the exact dates, but recently there was actually those prices were frozen. The Todd signs, there was a proposed increase, and I believe a couple years ago they clawed that back, and they didn't end up going ahead with the increase as they had proposed at that one particular time. I believe this is the first time we're seeing that increase come forward, but again, I do caution you that this is just kind of, I'm shooting off the cuff. However, if council so chooses, I would be happy to pull together a bit of information, because I did just receive some additional documentation on signage from TIAP as well, and bring that forward to council as an info report, just what that fee climbing is looked at, so as to inform your resolution if you so choose.
Yes, I think that would be worthwhile, because many of our businesses are reliant on this kind of signage. And if it continues to rise in cost, then it's pushing out of the reach of, like Councillor Olkey indicated, the boutique type and cottage industries. So we have currently support for the Village of Merrickville-Wolford request for resolution support and provincially significant wetlands designation. The Town of Puslinch request for resolution support legislative changes in Bill 132, and the health unit immunization is that it's not. Oh, it's the newsletter. Okay. So looking for resolution support on those three things. In the county of Haliburton, sorry, and the tourism-oriented designation signage fee increases. So in the county of Haliburton, is that the will of council that we support these four things moving forward? Councillor Fody?
Thank you, Your Worship. Because this radon wasn't brought to us till tonight, is that a subject matter that any of the staff would be up to speed on, that we should know about?
Madam Planner?
Thank you, through your worship. The radon report is an information report. Just to inform council, there was some discussion following the circulation of postcards by Health Canada a few meetings ago. So this report is really an information report to let council know that we have enrolled the township in the radon program for this fall. So this fall we would be working with Health Canada in terms of getting 100 test kits for homes in the township. Staff are also looking into acquiring an additional 100 test kits. Through enrollment in the program, there are resources available to us for education and outreach throughout the township. So at this point, this is more just an education or information report for council to let you know that this is something that we are looking into. If it is determined that there are concentrations in areas of the township that need to be addressed, what that means is that there's building code measures that we need to look at for new construction or for remediation within existing construction should a homeowner be interested in pursuing that. So it's really just something that's being studied now that we need to be aware of and that we need to bring to the forefront for more information.
Councillor maybe?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to our planner. Will there, or has there ever been a indication that it's going to be a mandatory thing to put some sort of testing and or remediation if radon gas is found in residents?
Through your worship, under the building code, there's a requirement that if there is a known problem, that there are building code measures that need to be taken. At this point, through the health unit, it hasn't been determined that it's a problem, but it's something that Health Canada is making people aware of. They're educating people. It's relatively inexpensive to make changes to a new build to incorporate radon mitigation measures. There are mitigation measures that can be retrofitted into an existing structure, such as fans within the basement, those types of things. So at this point, it's awareness more than it's an absolute problem.
Okay. Councillor Olkey? Go ahead.
Thank you. Is that a one-time fee or a yearly fee?
Annual.
Annual fee. Annual.
Yeah. So I think that is the impetus for people. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the province has contracted this out, which is why it's changing so significantly, but they're getting a ton of pushback. I know that I've heard of other municipalities speaking about this, as well as the member, provincial member, also speaking to this as well at different events. So I'll ask the planner to make a comment, and then I'll get a mover and a seconder for the. Oh, sorry, I thought you put your hand up. I apologize. I need a. Oh, it's Terry. I apologize. Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. On the knowledge that Councillor Olkey just brought forward with these Todd signs and the like, it's obviously just a revenue stream that's been created here. It has nothing to do, or at least not in these large amounts, has little to do with the increased cost of making these signs. I think we need to do, on behalf of all our tourism destinations and historical sites in this township, we need to put a letter forward to our local MPP who can carry that forward to Toronto on our behalf. I mean, these kinds of increases are unacceptable.
Councillor, maybe.
Thank you. And these signs, they pay for them once, they put them up, they rarely get changed for a number of years unless the business goes 10 years, but they're paying an annual fee, and that sign, having been partially in a sign business once upon a day, you know that they're not costing that much money. And I hate to say that, it's definitely a cash cow, and I think we definitely need to put a letter forward or some sort of amendment that supports what's been said.
So I need a mover and a seconder for the information item support that we've identified. Councillor Olkey will move, and Councillor Maybe will second. Terry, you had indicated that we should send something to the local MPP in regards to this, and the MP, or who else are you looking for?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Or the Minister of Tourism?
From what I understand, this is a provincial issue, is it not?
Yes, it's provincial.
So, no, the MPP is fine. But I think on behalf of all our tourism and our historical sites in this township, these kind of increases can't be just lightly taken. I mean, they have to be. We have to put up a little barrier against them, is what I'm saying. I don't care whether the province has gone and jobbed this out to a third party. Somebody has to be made aware of this is unacceptable. And if the province has done this, then the province can answer to it. But yes, to answer your question, Your Worship, we need to put a letter out on behalf of, I believe we need to put a letter out on behalf of our township and speaking to this on behalf of our residents who are affected.
Okay. So the amendment to the original motion moved by Councillor Olkey, seconded by Councillor Maybe, with the exception of the request received from the Village of Merrickville, Wolford, regarding provincially significant wetlands designation, the Township of Puslinch regarding legislative changes to Bill 132, and the County of Haliburton regarding tourism-oriented designation signage fee increases, and send a letter to the local MPP regarding this matter. Any discussions on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment as presented? All those opposed? Carried. So the motion now reads, moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the information items be received and filed, with the exception of the request received from the Village of Merrickville, Wolford regarding provincially significant wetlands designation, and the Township of Puslinch regarding legislative changes in Bill 132, and the County of Haliburton regarding tourism-oriented destination signage fee increases, and send a letter to the local MPP regarding this matter. All those in favor of the motion in its entirety? All those opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Next is the in-camera portion of the meeting this evening, moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the council adjourn and form in camera to consider litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and to consider personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. All those in favor of the motion as presented? All those opposed? Carried. Thank you for your patience, people in the gallery. for you, and then you've got to get one to take away with you.
chez Radio-Canada.
This is a CBC podcast.
J'ai commencé à Radio-Canada quand j'avais 14 ans. Fait que c'est une longue histoire d'amour, Radio-Canada et moi.
CBC was the only channel on television when I was growing up.
C'est un icône, c'est un logo que tout le monde connaît.
CBC is a cornerstone in people's lives. They rely on it.
We're focusing on content and programming that reflect our community.
Pour moi, Radio-Canada, ça a toujours été la référence en termes d'information.
I think when people think of CBC, there's an immediate trust, which is something that we do not take for granted. It's something that we've built over time.
When we resonate in our local communities, we touch the people's hearts. And that's what really is important in our neighborhoods.
C'est ça le mandat de Radio-Canada, d'informer les gens d'un océan à l'autre, en anglais, en français, et ici, dans les territoires du Nord-Ouest aussi, dans les langues autochtones.
Because our environment and our lives and our cultures are so unique.
Harry and Meghan joined the rest of the royal family today for their final public royal appearance before stepping down. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex didn't take part in the Queen's procession through Westminster Abbey at the start of the Commonwealth service. From the end of the month, and after just under 2 years after Harry married Meghan, the couple will leave royal life behind to move to North America. Our royal correspondent, Brianna Mills, reports.
For one final time, the Sussexes were on official duty. From the reaction of the school children, they were obviously still the star attraction as they made their way to their seats. But with Prince William and Kate next up the aisle, all eyes were on the Cambridges and the Sussexes. It's up to you to decide if you think this is awkward. Prince Edward took charge of the small talk as the brothers kept their eyes on their order of service. Usually the Queen would be centre of attention, but the first time we've seen the Sussexes with their relatives was always going to distract from the celebrations for her Commonwealth family. The past 5 days have felt like their farewell tour, with no confirmation of how much time they're going to spend in the UK in the future. There's no doubt the Sussexes have attracted a new kind of crowd, and that is a loss to the royal family. There is also, of course, uncertainty about this new path that Harry and Meghan want to take. But in some ways, the door has been left open, because in 12 months' time, there will be a review to see how it's all working out.
Congratulations from all of us. How are you both feeling?
When they got engaged, we got the sense they were excited about what they could achieve together. But the scrutiny has proved too much and palace life too stifling, leaving the Queen with no option but to agree they can step away at the end of this month.
It's actually swapping one type of press intrusion for another type of press intrusion. I think it's not something you can do very quickly. Meghan will do it much more quickly than Prince Harry, because she's used to this, and that's her going back to her home territory. But for Harry, he's got an awful lot to learn. He's a military man.
The Queen has said they are still very much part of the family. In just over 2 years, they fulfilled every aspect of royal life. Now those official duties are over. In the end, their life together had to come first. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News at Westminster Abbey.
Time now to take over to Sky Sports News for an update from Roger.
I used to be a distance runner. Yeah, the 7 metres.
This sports bulletin is brought to you by the Vitality Running World Cup.
2021, have you done a deal yet?
No, we haven't sat down and talked yet. It's crazy because there's all these talks in the media and everything.
We could do it now.
I have a certain approach normally, in the sense that I don't stress. I mean, I trust Toto, and I think we have that trust between us. So we've said we've told each other basically what our goals are and what our aims are and our commitments, and so there's I don't ever feel there's necessarily always a rush, but then sometimes Toto's like, is everything okay? So we just always keep the channel open, and I'm sure in the near future we'll start to sit down, but I just don't feel stressed with it,
It's because we know actually
what we want to take a sharp intake of breath there with that.
That's the psychology fried. I texted Luis the other day, I think a week ago or 10 days. I'm reading all these comments in the press about our negotiations that Luis is asking so much money. We have never talked about it. It's all made up. And then I said, well, maybe we should sit down one day and have the chat. But I think I know so well where he's going to go. You know where I am.
Yeah.
It's about finding a day where we spend a few hours together, and that's what we've done in the past.
Last time it was done in my apartment in Monaco. It was like, how many hours was it? It was like
10. He locked me in there. And we had a pizza.
Yeah. But you own 30% of the team, so if you pay him a big number, then 30% is coming from your pocket.
I know, but we have that respect that I know which contribution Luis brings to the team as a driver and as a brand, and you always need to respect that and respect that a sports.
4.5 billion was the number. Did you make a note of that earlier? The value.
Don't worry, he sent me that number already a few weeks ago. I sent another one this morning.
He did send that one. He sent one to me last night.
What numbers?
It was reflecting some figures and stuff.
Yeah, starting to approach each other.
Yeah, so the softening up
and I knew it was a
process.
psychological thing, and he sent it back to me. And I didn't reply.
I knew.
Yeah.
But don't you fancy doing a Michael Schumacher and try to see if you can win in a Ferrari?
I think that's like a short-term kind of thing. If you look at all drivers that have driven for Ferrari, well, obviously it's an incredible team, and obviously the car's always beautiful. Red is, I've got red on my helmet. Red is the color of passion and love, or whatever you want to say. But what Mercedes have done for all the drivers, if you look at even Sterling Moss is still a part of the team. They honor that, and you become a part of a legacy and a lifelong partner, which I think is super appealing.
Mark Bright was just 2 years old, and his mum and dad were struggling to look after him and his older siblings. Because he was so young, he doesn't remember a lot, so he's recently been through social services records to find out what happened next.
I'm not chasing you. I simply refuse.
Coming up next, we've got the press preview for you. This is what's on the front of tomorrow's Daily Mail. Stay at home if you have a cold. A couple of headlines like that, a lot about coronavirus. Other stories too, though. We're going to be going through the papers in a moment with the journalist and author Ella Whelan and the editor of the Times literary supplement, Stig Abel. That's coming up next. You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, our first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, our top stories here tonight. And drastic measures have been put into place by the Italian government in a bid to stop the spread of the coronavirus, as the number of cases has risen to more than 9,000. The number of deaths in the country has also risen by 97 to 463. The FTSE 100 has suffered its biggest drop in one day since 2008 over fears of the coronavirus outbreak. And a fifth patient in the UK has died after testing positive for coronavirus, as the government's chief medical officer warns anyone with a minor fever could soon be told to self-isolate. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, our first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. Over the next half an hour, we'll be talking through the headlines with the journalist and author Ella Whelan and the editor of the Times literary supplement, Stig Abel. So hello to you two.
Hello.
So let's take a look then at what's making the front pages. And the Daily Telegraph leads with the government's warning that people with a cough or a cold could soon be told to self-isolate for a week. That's also on the front of the Express with the headline, Cough, Stay Home Order. The Mail leads on that story as well, saying the government has decided not to take more drastic measures such as closing schools or imposing travel bans. And it's the same story on the front of the Eye too, which also reports on the 5 deaths in the UK. The Guardian says stock markets have seen their biggest fall since 2008 as fears over the virus caused panic selling. That's also the lead for the Times, which says there's now growing alarm over the impact of the virus on the world economy. While the Mirror reports that pension pots have been badly hit by the losses, with those nearing retirement likely to be the worst affected. Saudi Arabia's oil price war with Russia has added to the turmoil on the money markets. That's on the front of the Financial Times. The Metro reports that social media companies are taking action to try and stop the spread of fake news about coronavirus. And on the front of the Star, Boris Johnson's call for people to act responsibly as shoppers stockpile toilet paper. So Ella Whelan and Stig Abel here with me, and all the papers leading on coronavirus.
Lucky for you, you've got 2 people who studied English literature at university.
Not strictly scientists.
No, so no. If anyone can tackle the virological aspect of this, it is the 2 of us, I feel.
Yeah, I feel like, what was it? I'm not, this is how little I know about sport. Is it Jurgen Klopp?
Yeah.
Who said, don't ask me about coronavirus. I mean, you are going to have to ask us about coronavirus, but I do feel like...
He also said, I wear a baseball cap and I don't shave very well, and I'm I'm one of those.
You've taken the cap off.
Yeah, exactly. The cap's off. But
okay, well, let's
give it a go anyway. I don't want to talk us down.
Front of the Daily Mail. Stay at home if you have a cold. Now, this was a news conference given by the Prime Minister and his 2 experts today, suggesting that we could be imminently in a stage where, should you have a cold or respiratory infection or a cough, you might have to self-isolate for a week.
Which sounds like sensible advice. If we've got the context to this is that Italy is currently now in lockdown because there's been such a surge. The
whole country rather than just the north, yeah.
Yes, because there's not only been such a surge in confirmed positive cases, but also in deaths. And so you think, OK, things seem to be ramping up. We've had discussions over the last few weeks or so about when we're going to hit this peak period, when it's going to be time to essentially shut down the UK. And this suggestion of people self-isolating, using their common sense and deciding, even if they think, if they're unsure in a grey area of how they feel, to do something about it and self-isolate. Obviously, the question is, what happens if you don't work as we work as journalists, if you can't do it from home on your computer? What happens if you missing work means that you miss a paycheck if you're on 0-hours contracts? That's the important question there. I mean, just picking up on Boris Johnson's press conference, there's this interesting bit that's written about in the Times in which he's quoted as saying, you know, on the question of common sense things like handshakes or taking yourself off home if you have a cold, he says that actually the reason why you shouldn't shake people's hands is not because it doesn't, you know, you spread viruses that way and spread germs that way. It's because it gives subliminal messaging and body language about the fact that you need to signal to the other person.
This is pages 8 and 9 of the Times, just so we can see it while you're talking about it.
Yes, so it means it's suggesting that basically you need to send body language out to someone else that they should wash their hands rather than actually just not shaking hands because that spreads germs. So the point I'm making is it's hard when you're listening to, especially someone like Boris Johnson or the government, to decide what is the serious stuff from the scientists who are actually saying the reason you need to self-isolate is because this will have a knock-on effect, and what is essentially government spin. We were just watching President Trump giving a rather sober and nervous-looking statement in which you have to figure out what is political manoeuvring and what is actually the scientific route to getting us out of this.
Well, yes, and the news conference was involving, and he referred to, or deferred to those two scientific experts with a lot of the questions, and says that science is dictating policy at the moment. So when they come out with the decisions like the one about a cough or a cold, which is also on the front of the Telegraph, this is all down to the scientific evidence.
Yeah, and a lot of this is about trust, really. It's about trust in the first instance. Do we believe the government has our best interests at heart? Are they following the science? And I think the one thing the government's done very well is they've stood there with the chief medical officer and said, what do you think? And you have lots of people intemperately on Twitter saying, why are you not doing more? Why are you not doing more? Look at Italy. Look how Italy are locked down. Why have you not done the same thing? Well, one of the things you could point to in Italy is they have handled this disastrously. They may well have stopped flights coming from China early on, but that gave them a false sense of security. The Mail has this somewhere saying, and instead of managing the inevitable spread of coronavirus, they thought they could shut it at the door. And of course, the lesson is they couldn't. So Italy went from saying, we've pretty much stopped people coming in with coronavirus, to thinking they're already through the door and we've not done enough to check it. Witness Italy now with the highest rate of deaths outside China, more deaths rising all the time. So they didn't get a grip on it. So do we believe the medical advice of the establishment? And if you live in this country and you go and use the NHS, you've got to, haven't you? The sort of social contract we have living in this country is that we accept advice given to us from positions of authority and expertise. Contra some of the things Boris Johnson said over the last 3 or 4 years, we do believe in expertise. We do believe in people saying this is the right thing to do. And then the second aspect of trust is we now need to be trusted ourselves to do what's right for our fellow man and woman, because it might be really inconvenient for me to spend 7 days at home because I have a tickle in my throat. It might mean all sorts of things that I regard personally as important don't happen. And if I have a 0 hours contract, it might be worse than that. It might mean I can't get a paycheck that I need, but I've got to somehow summon up altruism to say, me doing this and you doing this and everyone doing this will ultimately mean we get out of this quicker and with fewer consequences, and that's better for everybody.
And also that sense of personal responsibility also is relevant when you're talking about decisions on when you decide to shut down gatherings of large numbers of people, when you potentially shut down schools or universities, or make those bigger decisions, because the experts seem to be saying if you do it too early, it doesn't necessarily have an effect at the beginning, and you lose the momentum. People can't do it for too long. It's not going to be so effective, so you have to introduce it at exactly the right time. That's what they seem to be saying.
Yeah, and part of the difficulty in all of this is that you do have to remember that not everyone that gets the coronavirus is going to even be drastically sick. They say that the vast majority of people who are young and healthy, or simply not of a certain age and not suffering from underlying health conditions, you might not even realise you've had it. It might be so mild. And so the other side of this, the kind of flip side of this coin is, what you don't want to have is promoting a kind of culture of fear and a panic. Elsewhere, I think, on some of the front pages, there's, the bog-off headline about people stockpiling toilet paper.
That's on the front of the Star, yes.
Hand sanitizer and that kind of, which is the sort of silly end of it. But I think on a broader point, we have, and I'm going to do it, I'm going to bring Brexit into this. We've had for many years discussions now about kind of fearful politics, culture of fear. What happens if a no deal happens and suddenly there's economic Armageddon and we all have to be stockpiling toilet paper and this would be dreadful. And now, when we've got this very serious issue with coronavirus and people are stockpiling toilet paper, you've got a huge amount, I've been looking at it on social media, there's been a huge amount of kind of fun poking and mickey taking and, aren't people so ridiculous to go into Tesco and, flood the pasta aisles. But actually, this is what happens when you have a general sense of society that's prone to panic, stock markets crashing, uncertainty being essentially the rule of the day, when really you'd want a government to take a more sober approach. And I think it has taken a more sober approach throughout. You're right, it has said, right, let's not jump the gun here. And the suggestion that people stay home if they've got a cold, at this point you think maybe it's sensible, but you would always be trying to err on the side of allowing people to live their daily lives as best as they can without any disruption.
And the government has said that it's talking to supermarkets. They're thinking of relaxing the laws, allowing late-night deliveries to supermarkets to try and make sure that shelves are stocked. Let's have a quick look at the Metro as well, because as you say, trust is important, and they're suggesting that there's going to be an attempted clampdown, at least, on some of the myths and untruths that are circulating.
And one of the things that strikes me a lot about coronavirus generally is what it brings to the surface issues that already exist. So one of the issues is fake news. So how that's promoted by on social media accounts, Google and Facebook and Twitter, where someone can just pretend to be representing a hospital. I think it's happened today, and saying a hospital's been shut down because of coronavirus. It's not true, but people just say these things. That exists whether coronavirus exists or not. The problem of 0 hours contracts, where people are living as a precariat and they're not sure where the next paycheck's coming from. That exists already, but it comes to the surface with coronavirus. Look at America. Donald Trump, the fear in his eyes as he realizes, A, he's not prepared well enough for a pandemic, B, the economy that he's really rested his entire political future on is in danger of slipping into recession. The underlying issues in the American society are there anyway. Coronavirus brings them to the surface. When his Democratic opponent says, what about universal health care? It becomes an even more pertinent point where people cannot be treated if they are poor in America. People who are on 0 hours contracts in America cannot get a paycheck if they don't go to work, if they do the right thing and self-isolate. So those tensions that are in all our societies come to the fore with coronavirus, and it makes us think more about how we should be living our lives. And one of the things we've been talking, Ella and I, earlier on, and I think it comes everywhere, is when we get through this, and we will get through this, and this will be managed, and we will know someone who dies, probably, all of us will know someone by the end of this who loses their life because of coronavirus. So it will be a painful and brutal and heartbreaking next few months for everybody. We'll have to start asking questions about what sort of life we want to live, what our relationship to work is, and all sorts of other deep-seated questions about the way things should be.
It's also on the front, mentioned on the front page of the Times and the Guardian, the news about the stock market crash.
I think it's also on the front of the Mirror as well,
Yeah,
which is one that we happen to have available.
But
yes, you're right, it's on all of this.
Is addressing that, the point that Sig makes about what a future might look like, but also not allowing coronavirus to rewrite the present or the past. So the question of the economy, whether or not coronavirus had come along, it was not in rude health. We've had, to bring on Brexit again, we've had years of discussion about the economy basically being on the brink of collapse based on the decision of one EU bureaucrat or one British politician. So the idea that the danger would be to paint the events of the next few months and years post-coronavirus as simply all down to this pandemic, simply all down to this virus, when actually the key point is that it brings to the surface lots of underlying problems, the main one being that the British economy certainly is in very bad health and needs very big changes, and the fact that it isn't going to, I think probably isn't going to be able to cope very well with this virus and isn't going to be able to support workers, and lots of questions are going to be asked, means that, virus aside, we need to make some big changes in society that this issue has brought to a head.
And of course, the government narrative is it's in good shape, and we'll hear from the Chancellor this week with his budget of some of the measures to support the economy. We shall wait and see.
But we may need to think about things like how much we fly. I mean, the other thing it brings to the surface, what's our relationship to the global supply chain? Do we have too many things brought cheap from other countries that come into our economy? Do we fly too much? Do we work in offices when we could work from home? We could re-establish how we regard all sorts of things at the end of this.
Raises so many issues. OK, we're going to take a break right now, though. Coming up after the break, the EU could offer €6 billion to Turkey to keep migrants out. More about that coming up after the break.
Passengers' temperatures were checked while workers disinfected counters and planes at the airport at the Iranian city of Isfahan in an effort to contain the spread of the new coronavirus. Iran has seen 194 reported deaths from the new virus, making it by far the hardest hit country in the Middle East. Last week, Iran cancelled Friday prayers in major cities as it grappled to contain the virus. Protesters have taken to the streets of Mexico City on International Women's Day to protest rampant violence against women and femicide. Some spray-painted messages like "Mexico kills women" onto monuments, smashed windows and set fires. Most marched peacefully in groups organised by universities, non-profits or with friends. Government data shows that 3,825 women in Mexico met violent deaths last year, 7% more than in 2018. Tensions over restrictions due to coronavirus have triggered a riot at an Italian prison. Inmates were angered that their loved ones would not be able to visit. The inmates eventually surrendered. And several thousand people have participated in anti-abortion open mass 80 kilometres west of Buenos Aires. They carried anti-abortion banners, some with pictures of fetuses. A sculpture of a giant baby in the fetal position was also present. The Argentine president on March the 1st expressed his intention to send Congress a proposal to legalise abortion.
Welcome back. You're watching the Press Preview. With me tonight, journalist and author Ella Whelan and the editor of the Times literary supplement, Stig Abel. We're going to turn to the front page of the Telegraph just for a small story. It's dominated by coronavirus, but there's a story there at the bottom that you spotted at the situation in Turkey as far as migrants is concerned. So what's this development?
Yes, a small part of the front page, but a very important story and something that needs to be watched in terms of, aside from coronavirus, what is ongoing is our discussions with the European Union and the whole question of Brexit and how it's going to play out. And this is just a reminder, myself as a Brexiteer, I like to bring up these things to show that the characterisation of the European Union as this very fluffy, nice, pro-migration, open borders kind of institution is actually a falsity. We see here that the EU is negotiating with Erdogan and Turkey millions of pounds in order for him to basically stem migration and keep people in Turkey and keep people from entering Fortress Europe. And the problem with that is that we see the introduction of camps, basically people living in squalor in these areas, and on occasion some pretty authoritarian crackdowns.
But a lot of
on any
Brexiteers would want the
migrants
EU to do this, wouldn't they?
I think that no, I don't think. I think there's no evidence to show that Brexiteers want to have a situation in which you create a kind of fortress Europe or a fortress Britain. But actually, most people are quite positive in relation to the question of immigration, but it's about how it's controlled.
Do you think Brexiteers would say we want more refugees coming towards Europe to come into Britain directly rather than going into...
I don't know about... I'm very pro...
I'd say that's pretty unlikely.
I'm very pro the idea of being open with our borders. And I'm not characterising myself as all Brexiteers. But the point I want to make is you need to remember, people need to remember in these discussions going forward about how we work out our immigration policy, how we work out a relationship with the European Union, that this characterisation of the European Union as a wonderful, open, friendly organisation, institution, is a nonsense because it operates specifically on its immigration policy. It has what I would call racist immigration policies, and it operates on the basis of dealing with corrupt politicians like Erdogan to basically stem migration. And I mean, that is pretty bad if it comes to...
One of the central arguments that the Brexiteers, including Nigel Farage and Dominic Cummings, levied was that Turkey was going to join the EU. That was one of the three major messages in the run-up to the referendum. That, of course, could only happen if Britain didn't exercise its veto to stop them. So it wasn't true. So, I mean, the spectre of Turkey raises all sorts of ghosts of the of the referendum campaign, I would say.
Okay, let's move on.
This is about the European Union's relationship with Turkey, not ours.
Okay, let's move on to a story inside the Times, which...
yes, it's a good headline.
It's good. Well, it's all I've read, so you'll have to explain. Nifty over 50s need more sex scenes.
Why are they called nifty?
I don't know. I'm the only over 50-year-old here, let's be honest.
That's the most shocking event of the whole, even that you're over 50.
This is why we like you so much.
Exactly. It's true, though. Everyone at home will be going, really? Anyway, so there's the question of, is there enough sex showing over 50s? And Amanda Redman, who's an actress who's 62, says, there aren't that many programmes that show it. And actually, there's a couple of reports out which I've read generally, which shows the group of people most discriminated against in the creative industries. It's not women, it's not people from an ethnic minority, it's older people and disabled people are the two greatest. But older people, there's just not very many old people seen on screen
and is
generally.
it her argument that she just wants it to be normalised? It's not just young people that...
Well, she says that there's a huge... The article mentions Love Island and shows like that and says, you know, there's a huge amount of sex going on for young people, why not for older people? Actually, as a big fan of Love Island, I'd like to point out that you never get to see the sexual scenes in there anymore, and that's not me being kind of like a pervert.
Is that disappointing?
But essentially, I think actually, on a more broader scale, we've gotten a lot pruder when it comes to
I'm going to have to stop you, and it's not because you're talking about sex scenes, I promised.
We're going to show a picture of Daniel. We're going to show a picture of Daniel Craig with his top off.
We haven't got, well, we could show it quickly.
Show a picture of Daniel. No.
Well, maybe next time.
If you're interested, just Google Daniel Craig with his top. He's 52. There you go.
And so why are we showing
He looks almost as good for his age as you, Anna. Now, that's two 50-year-olds who look good. So anyway, he's showing his lovely muscles. And if you like that sort of thing, you'll like that sort of thing.
Okay. I'm not quite sure why we're looking at that, but anyway.
Well, why not?
Why not? Okay.
He's a nifty over 50.
We're out of time. Ella and Stig, thanks both very much indeed. Top stories coming up next.
Italian Prime Minister tells the entire country to stay at home with new travel restrictions and bans on public gatherings. It comes after a day of rioting in the country's prisons at the curtailing of visitor rights. 7 people are killed. Markets suffer almost unprecedented falls in the wake of the virus and a spat between the big oil producers. Well, here the government warns it will soon ask anyone with a temperature to stay at home for a week. In other news this morning, the Alex Salmond trial. A civil servant tells a court the former First Minister tried to rape her. And a royal farewell. Harry and Meghan bow out from full-time public life. Good morning. Italy is facing complete lockdown today. The Prime Minister has addressed the nation and extended to the whole of Italy what were already the most draconian restrictions on people's movements since World War II. Giuseppe Conte told the country, the future depends on us and everyone must do their part. He implored people to effectively stay at home. Well, here the Foreign Office has warned against all but essential travel to Italy. Our Europe correspondent Michelle Clifford reports.
This was rush hour in Milan, but it didn't look like it. Most people were avoiding public transport, many choosing to work from home in an area of Italy hit hardest by the virus. The city is Italy's financial capital, and the stock exchange did at least manage to open as normal, although banks have been preparing for days to avoid disruption. 16 million people in north and central Italy were already in lockdown, banned from leaving unless they have a very good reason, and now similar measures are to be implemented across the entire nation. This, the Italian Prime Minister said, was the stay-at-home decree.
La decisione giusta oggi è di restare a casa.
The decision today is fair, that all of Italy should stay at home. The future of Italy is in our hands, now more than ever. Each person should do their part. And because of this, today we'll apply these measures across the whole of Italy that we've already put in place for the centre of Italy, the region of Lombardy and provinces, just a few days ago.
It's not just travel that's restricted. In Milan and at more than 24 jails, inmates protested after all visits were banned. The government desperate to avoid the coronavirus spreading within the prison system and adding to an already overburdened health service. At Cremona Hospital in the north, staff are struggling to deal with the sheer number of people affected with the virus, a situation replicated at hospitals right across the worst affected areas in Italy.
We have a lack of doctors and nurses, and the 12% of the positives are health staff. We should have done much better prevention training to protect our health staff. We don't need infected heroes.
Enforcing the new curbs on people travelling in and out of affected areas is a logistical nightmare. At Rome's main station, police officers met trains which are still travelling from places like Milan and Venice in the lockdown zone. Anyone arriving from territory now in quarantine had to provide their details and justify their reason for making the journey.
They asked me, why are you coming to Rome? Why am I travelling? I'm actually not from Milan. I just happened to be there. I told them that I had some health checks to do here.
A decree covering Rome says any travellers from the affected areas will have to self-isolate, but that will be difficult to enforce, which is why the government is threatening jail for anyone flouting the ban on movement.
Police forces are in charge of this, and even the army could be involved, according to this regulation that have been issued. But it's not that easy to convince all the Italian population that this measure need to be enforced.
The ban, which has forced ski resorts, cinemas and theatres to close, is already having a huge impact on lives and business. But the government insists it's necessary to stop the virus spreading further. Michelle Clifford, Sky News, Rome.
Well, the world is, on paper at least, billions of pounds poorer this morning as global markets tumbled at almost unprecedented speed. A combination of the impact of COVID-19 and a row between Saudi Arabia and Russia over oil production sent the value of nearly everything into freefall. It was equally bad on both sides of the Atlantic. The FTSE 100 closed the day down almost 8%, its biggest single-day fall since the 2008 financial crisis. In the US, the Dow Jones closed down by more than 2,000 points. Here's our economics editor, Ed Conway.
Not since the darkest days of 2008 have we seen anything like it. Share prices plunging around the world. Trading temporarily suspended after American markets opened. Panic and shock as the threat of a global pandemic collides with geopolitics. The FTSE 100 is now formally in bear market territory. It's fallen by more than 20% since its peak, and today was the single worst day since 2008. What does that mean in historical perspective? Well, here you see every single one of the worst days since the FTSE 100 was created back in the 1980s. You've got Black Monday there, spread over 2 days. You've got the financial crisis as well, and there it is today, down by getting towards 8%. That is a real concern for investors, as is the fact that oil prices are also on their way down. Have a look at that. That shows you crude oil prices falling dramatically down by more than 20%. Crude prices had already been falling, but over the weekend, Saudi Arabia launched an extraordinary price war following a spat with Russia. The upshot is that the oil market could be flooded with cheap Saudi oil. Good news perhaps for motorists, but disastrous for the oil companies, which are a big part of London's stock markets. And the rise in diplomatic tension, another global risk to unnerve investors. The UN's economic body, the Conference on Trade and Development, thinks this constitutes the risk of a global recession. What does that mean? Well, broadly speaking, economists think anything below 2.5% growth is a recession when it's spread across the world. And actually, they're pretty rare. When you look back over the course of recent history, you've got the dot-com crash over there, you've got the financial crisis, big dip there. And the expectation recently was that the economy was going to actually accelerate to around 2.7%. But UNCTAD think actually we're facing more of a prospect of 1.7% growth. That represents about $1 trillion in lost growth, they say.
Governments need to spend at this point in time to prevent the kind of meltdown that could be even more damaging than the one that is likely to take place over the course of the year.
Now put all of that together, whether it's the global economy, whether it's oil prices, whether it's COVID-19, and you get a sense that investors are very nervous indeed. Another place you can see that is in bond markets. This shows you the interest rate on UK government debt, long-term government debt, going all the way back to 1703. So a look into history here, and you can see that it has now got to the lowest level ever. That is UK government borrowing rates, and it just shows you how concerned investors are. They're willing to lend to this government at incredibly low rates, the lowest rates since the birth of capitalism. Which has left people wondering, does the new Chancellor use those cheap interest rates to finance a spending spree at the budget? Does he cut VAT? Does the Bank of England cut interest rates? With this starting to look increasingly like an economic crisis, all bets are off. Ed Conway, Sky News.
Well, in the last few hours, Donald Trump has made an address at the White House about the coronavirus outbreak.
We are going to be asking tomorrow, we're seeing the Senate, we're going to be meeting with House Republicans, Mitch McConnell, everybody, and discussing a possible payroll tax cut or relief, substantial relief, very substantial relief. That's a big number. We're also going to be talking about hourly wage earners getting help so that they can be in a position where they're not going to ever miss a paycheck. We're going to be working with companies and small companies, large companies, a lot of companies, so that they don't get penalized for something that's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's not our country's fault. This was something that we were thrown into, and we're going to handle it, and we have been handling it very well. The big decision was early when we shut down our borders. We're the first ones ever to do that. We've never done that in our country before.
Well, on the west coast of the US, a cruise liner carrying 21 people with confirmed cases of the coronavirus has now arrived in Oakland in Northern California. The Grand Princess was held for a number of days off the coast while all the passengers, including 142 Britons, were tested. Our US correspondent Greg Myland has more from Oakland.
Well, the process has begun now of getting him off that ship, and at that news conference where we just heard from the President, Mike Pence, the Vice President, gave an update on that as well. 25 children who were aboard, have been aboard this ship, have been tested and found to be clear of the virus, so that is some good news. We've seen over the course of the time since this ship docked, some tents were set up on the dockside to process those who are coming off. They were getting off, first of all, those who had some acute medical conditions, those who had some symptoms. They've been taken to hospital. Then they'll begin the job of getting everybody else off. They will all be screened. And first of all, the American citizens will be taken off. They'll go to a military base about 50 miles from here. Those from other parts of the country will be flown to military bases around the US. And then they'll start tackling the foreign nationals, 54 countries represented on that ship. The Canadians will be sent first of all. A plane that takes them to Canada will then come back and be cleaned, and will take those 142 British nationals from tomorrow afternoon, they're saying, and that flight will land in the UK on Wednesday afternoon, and then it will be for the UK authorities to deal with them, because all of those people will go into 14 days of quarantine. That is,
I gotta be in for
for them
3
having been
o'clock
on
in
that
the
ship
morning.
for so long, and that process will, they say, take 2 or 3 days. For the crew members, 1,100 of them, also including some British nationals, including the captain, they will stay on the ship, but the ship won't stay here. As soon as all the passengers are off, this ship will head back out to sea. It's not clear where it will spend the next 14 days, but the crew members will be in quarantine on the ship so that they can reassure the neighbourhood that this ship won't be sitting here for 2 weeks, with some concerns amongst people living in Oakland about their own health here. But that process is now underway, and those passengers are on their way home.
Greg Mylan there in Northern California. Well, here, the government has warned of a dramatic change in advice coming in the next fortnight. Very soon, anyone with a fever or respiratory tract infection will be asked to stay at home for a full week. The Prime Minister revealed it'll be part of the transition to the next phase of efforts to delay rather than contain COVID-19. Boris Johnson also admitted he's no longer shaking hands. This is our political editor, Beth Rigby.
5 deaths and 319 cases. The Prime Minister sombre and serious, preparing us for what's to come.
We remain in the contain phase of the outbreak, but watching what is happening around the world, our scientists think containment is extremely unlikely to work on its own, and that is why we are making extensive preparations for a move to the delay phase.
A clear admission the government cannot stop the spread of coronavirus, but they can try to slow it down.
We are now very close to the time, probably within the next 10 to 14 days, when the modelling would imply we should move to a situation where we say everybody who has even minor respiratory tract infections or a fever should be self-isolating for 7 days afterwards.
A sign of things to come, but with the number of cases galloping along, many asking if this is enough. Is there a risk that in trying not to alarm and panic people, you are actually going too slow in taking these measures?
You're right, Beth, in the sense that there's no question that this is going to become a significant, a much more significant outbreak than it currently is. That's obvious to everyone. In the course of this week, obviously, we're going to be looking more at the detail of the steps that we could take.
All options on the table, but the chief scientific officer defending not just the pace of reaction, but the policy decisions too.
Lots of things that seem intuitive and you think, well, that should work, turn out to have very little, if any, effect. And one of those is actually airport screening. So temperature screening in airport doesn't really have much effect. It's worth noting that those countries that instituted it very early, some of their first cases came through that screening, weren't detected in the screening and then popped up.
Earlier in the day, officials and ministers to Whitehall for another emergency meeting, but so many questions still unanswered around government support for workers. Do you have any message for those worrying about being paid and on universal credit?
We're working on all these scenarios.
And staff shortages in prisons. Justice Secretary, what about the idea that some prisoners should be released early? Are you keen on that or not?
Very much.
Those ministers tight-lipped, but the Health Secretary more forthcoming as he was summoned to the Commons to answer questions.
Given that around 5% of those with coronavirus may require critical care, what is his current best estimate of the number of ventilators that will be required to meet that demand?
The answer is more, and as many as possible, frankly. So we are buying ventilators, and we have a whole commercial strategy around that, and of course training up people to be able to use them.
No concrete new measures today, but expect plenty more press conferences like these as the crisis grows. Now a national emergency. It will require a national effort from us all. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, in some other news this morning, Scotland's former First Minister Alex Salmond arrived in court in Edinburgh on Monday for the first day of his trial over accusations of sexual assault. The jury heard evidence from a witness who said she felt embarrassed and humiliated after Mr. Salmond allegedly touched her inappropriately at his official residence. Mr. Salmond faces 14 charges of alleged offences against 10 women, including one of attempted rape, all of which he denies. A warning: this report from our Scotland correspondent James Matthews does contain graphic detail of the allegations.
He's Scotland's former First Minister, now on trial, accused of sex crimes. Alex Salmond denies the 14 charges against him. Day one of his trial heard from one of 10 women accusers. The former Scottish Government official, known as Woman H, told how she was alone with him inside Bute House, the First Minister's official residence. It was June 2014, and they were alone in the drawing room. She said he sat next to her on the sofa and pulled her legs over his. He was touching her and kissing her neck and face. She retreated, she said, feeling she was being chased, like she was in a room with Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. When she tried to get out of the door, he leaned over her, effectively pinning her against the wall, touching her breast and trying to kiss her while she tried to wrestle her way out. When she did leave the room, she went upstairs to retrieve her belongings. On the way back down, he blocked her exit. She said she was frozen, panicking inside, and that he then pounced on her and started removing his clothes and hers. She said Mr. Salmond pushed her back onto a bed and stood over her, naked and aroused, before climbing on top of her. Alex Salmond's accuser said she managed to push him away, get to the lift inside Bute House and make her exit. She said she felt hunted, humiliated and embarrassed. She said she didn't tell anyone because that would have been the ultimate humiliation. He has other women, she said, and I didn't want to be considered as that. Courtroom number 3 heard the alleged incident in June came after another the previous May. Again, they were in Bute House. He produced alcohol he'd been given by the Chinese ambassador, and they drank shots. She said he was half cut and put his hand down her top, started to kiss her face and neck and touch her legs. She said she managed to get up and leave, but said she felt she was having an otherworldly, outer-body experience. It was like I froze inside, she said. Alex Salmond denies the charges against him in this continuing trial. He's lodged a special defence of consent for 4 of the charges and alibi for a 5th. James Matthews, Sky News, Edinburgh.
Coming up on Sky News, Jamie Vardy ends his 9-game goal drought as Leicester beat Aston Villa 4-0 to consolidate 3rd place in the Premier League.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. We received a legal update from our in-house legal counsel, and I received direction from counsel on other matters as identified on the agenda. So moving forward, for number 6, the action required items. I have the right. Councillor Olkey, do you have a motion in front of you there?
I don't have a motion.
Right. Next motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Olkey, seconded by Councillor Gorell, that council authorizes the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with Public Sector Digest (PSD) to implement citywide asset manager and works, and that council approve additional funding of $91,100 from the citywide asset manager and works software to be funded from the modernization funding. The approved 2020 operating budget included $50,000 for software. And further, that council approve additional funding in the amount of $6,825 for a full-time asset management position in 2020 to be funded from the modernization funding. The approved 2020 operating budget included $66,000 for a portion of a position. And further be it resolved that council approve modernization funding be allocated to fund half the asset management position in 2021, being approximately $49,550. Discussion on this motion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, as discussed at the last meeting, the reason it was postponed is the fact that I'm not in favor of a full-time person. I am, however, in favor of a 2-year contract, which may or may not lead into a contract position or into a full-time position. But at this point, I'm fully in favor of getting this asset management plan on the road. As far as the funding for the software, that's great. Funding from the modernization fund, that's fine as well. I just think we need a 2-year contract, and it should be up to and limited to a certain amount.
So you're looking to amend the motion as it's presented?
I certainly am.
So the amendment would read, based on my notes here, that a full-time 2-year term position for asset management up to the full amount of $6,825. And that further be it resolved, council approved modernization funding to be allocated to fund half the asset management position in 2021, being up to approximately $49,550.
Please don't say full-time.
Oh, sorry. It says full-time. Well, it's full-time hours. It's considered full-time position. Or are you looking to make it part-time?
No, I'm looking to make it contract. I want the word contract in there.
Yes. So I'll let the CAO clarify that.
The breakdown of staff, be they term or otherwise, is full-time would be 35 hours a week, part-time less. So we say full-time term means they'd be on a 2-year contract. So we can say full year.
2-year term contract.
For your amendment, a full-time 2-year term, you could add the word contract if you want. Full-time.
Is that what you're looking for?
Full-time 2-year term contract.
And that contract would come back to us prior to the hiring?
Sorry, I missed that, Mr.
Well,
Deputy
I'm
Mayor.
just saying the contract, because we put an upward limit. When you say contract versus full-time, there's a difference in benefits. There's a difference in a lot of things. So who gets to decide that?
So how about we vote on the amendment first, and then we can have further discussion on that, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. The deputy mayor's made that amendment. Who would like to second the amendment? Councillor Maybe.
Has been that staff now represents finance, operations, and the grants committee. So long-windedness says we need to have a couple of clarifications on that, and further, I am recommending, or I would put a resolution forward, that we'd refer this to the peer group on Wednesday evening so they have a kick at the cat. Thank you.
Ms. Goodman, do you want to speak to the concerns that Councillor Gorell brought up, and then perhaps how this might go with peer on Wednesday? If not, I believe that the agenda's already been completed, but we could probably amend that. That would be easy.
And thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Yes, and thank you for the March 31st. Absolutely, that should be clarified. So we have actually developed an online reporting form, and when we hit the 1 year mark from our spring grants, from the allocation of those funds, so that would be, council approved the grants in May of 2019. So in June, when the funds were awarded, we will send out a reminder email to all of those groups asking them to complete their 1 year reporting form. So hopefully that clarifies the first point, but it will be an online form. And this is one of the objectives that we've had with this policy, is to allow us to bring more accountability to the process in terms of vetting the requests, measuring them, so it's not, and giving us for lack of a better term, a bean counter at the end of it. How many people did we benefit? What did we do? How were the funds allocated? How was the municipality recognized for its contribution? And that's one of the reasons why we've been working to kind of revise the process for community engagement with additional funds through the community grants program as approved by council. The one challenge that I saw with the community engagement when we went through the 2019 budget process, by and large at the staff level, we'd completed the budget and we were here presenting the budget to you as council as a whole. And we had a couple of our community groups, and in past it's been committees of council and community groups and others have come to present. But by and large, especially when we have a year with significant staff and council turnover, we lose some of that continuity and consistency in programming. Basically, the one thing that we find somewhat lacking in that process is, again, there's no way to vet those requests, nor if direction isn't provided to staff to go back and include those requests to an already completed budget, we may have missed the boat, which I think has happened, I will say, very recently in our past. What we're trying to do is slowly adapt the program so that the community group requests would still come through the peer committee. And what we did this year is we actually had our senior management team all attend the particular meeting for peer when our organizations presented their budgets. So what we were able to do after the fact was go back and have a discussion. For example, there was a request from the Lansdowne Association for revitalization to put walls or panels on the side of the new pavilion over at Jerry Park, for example, where we would look at that, and the director of operations, who's responsible for those kinds of capital projects, we would say, well, that's probably a little bit early to kind of look at those kinds of opportunities. So what we're going to do is that one maybe wouldn't be included. Now, we are not yet at the point of reporting that back necessarily. And again, as we're kind of trying to adapt processes. Okay, so now I'm rambling a little bit, all of which to say what we're trying to do is bring some more consistency to that program as well, so that those requests coming in from the community groups are vetted by staff and included in the budget in the most appropriate way. So if it is an operating cost, a capital cost, or if it is a request that should go back to the grants, for example, if it was a one-off event. Again, by encouraging some of those requests to come through grants, it allows us to have the mechanism to measure and vet and weigh those against the predetermined criteria which are included. But by having those groups still attend peer and present in that way, that it's an opportunity for them to get the ear of council and senior staff and our mayor to kind of talk about their successes from the previous year, their goals and aspirations for the forthcoming year. to get their requests in for the administrative funds, because we recognize that things change. In my 8 years here, we've already seen that grow from $1,000 to $2,000 in response to increasing insurance costs for our community groups. So we try to leave it somewhat flexible, but I do understand that while we've tightened up the community grant side of it, that there's still some work to be done in terms of clearly defining what the community engagement side of that looks like.
Councillor Grow.
Just to follow up then, so Kim, you're wanting to keep the community engagement open beyond the $2,000 per community, or would you prefer to take those asks from the community and put them into the community grants policy? Is that more clarity to that? So community engagement would show as a budget item $2,000 to the settlement areas, right? And through peer, you would encourage or instruct or whatever, guide the communities to make their programs through the grant program. Okay, that we would, I think it would be helpful to run that by the peer group so that they can ponder it and how that might affect their thinking. Because some of those items, it's plants and small things, and how do they put that together in a grant program without overwhelming it with like 12 small items? There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I can appreciate that trying to streamline some of these processes and trying to I know that the treasurers put us to task in regards to operating being operating, capital being capital. So this is, I think, an indication of trying to keep apples and oranges separate. Which is why this policy is trying, but I think it is a good point to bring it to peer to have discussion on Wednesday morning. It's Wednesday morning at 8:30, not Wednesday evening, but that's okay. 8 o'clock this Wednesday, I apologize. Right, because there's a mayor's chat at 10, so.
So then would it be appropriate to make a resolution to defer this to peer group?
Is that satisfactory for you, or is that going to screw up your intake?
Through your worship, we do have an intake coming up this April 3rd. However, if council is willing to provide staff a little bit of leeway in terms of interpretation of the requests that come forward from our community groups in particular, if you would like to pass the policy so that it's done so other groups can adhere to the current policy, but staff can apply some discretion to those 4 particular organizations that would typically come through community engagement.
You're talking community engagement.
For those additional requests that may have originally come through engagement, but this particular time to come through grants policy.
Oh, okay. Is that okay? So the motion that's on the floor that council approve the revised community grants policy AD-003-16. Are we satisfied with the conversation that we've had this evening and having it come back to peer to be reviewed as well? Councillor Maybe?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I did have just one comment. Basically, one of the things that I know we've had to get tried to get traction for the last little while, and it's specifically the Gananoque Humane Society and how this all plays in, because they are doing such a large service out in our community, but don't seem to be able to get the dollars that they really require to participate and do what they need to do. So I'm championing them. How can we engage them better to better fund them, to better support them, plain and simple? Their ask is fairly large. Granted, but if we were doing that same service out of our own coffers, we'd be easily 10 times that amount. So I think we need to really look at it and see if there's a way of better addressing their requirements.
Madam Planner and, Ms. Goodman.
And through your worship to Councillor Maybe, I've actually already been working very closely with the Gan Humane Society this year, just in terms of the nature of their request, and the revisions to the grant policy will ensure that they are able to approach us, be it regular operating costs, be it capital costs, be it special event or program costs for their fundraising efforts, so that we've made sure that all of those types of support that they might need are included through the community grants process. At the same time, also recognizing where some of their challenges lay, after having sat with them a couple of times. What we're also trying to do is find additional mechanisms by which we can champion and support these kinds of organizations that go beyond our traditional grant programs and processes. So for example, we will be hosting a couple of co-op students from business and marketing at St. Lawrence College, and that will be happening through, I believe, April and into May. And what we want to do is partner one of these marketing students for a day or two, specifically with the Gananoque Humane Society, so that what we can do is help them increase their marketing and their awareness, and how can they better use tools like social media to engage volunteers and better promote their programs and events, and use that to, you know, as a bit of a fundraising drive and so on and so forth. So staff are becoming increasingly aware and conscientious of what some of the challenges are within our community, but are also trying to find innovative and unique solutions, because it's not always about being able to lay cash on the table, but recognizing that by building capacity within that organization, I think we're doing a valuable service in that way as well. Now, in fairness, you know, we do have a number of organizations, and just last year we had grant requests in excess of $300,000, and I do not remember the exact amount for the $80,000 that we had available. Now, by working with these organizations, we can kind of help provide guidance and advice to ensure that they're making the right ask of us, and that what we're trying to do is provide additional support and helping them find other sources of funding. In fact, I believe Mrs. Merkley out in the audience this evening will attest to the fact, you know, we're very keen to sit down and work with these organizations to help them find other avenues of funding. Our challenge being that we have an awful lot of worthy organizations operating within our municipality, and that their needs will grow and ebb. The pressures that they experience will change from year to year, and so we need to find the right way of providing support without including them as a regular line item within the budget.
Thank you for the point. So that's good. Any further discussion on this motion, or can I call the question? Call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, carried. Okay, the next motion on the floor is moved by Councillor Olkey, seconded by Councillor Gorell, that the council receive the Ontario Clean Water Agency's annual report for the Lansdowne drinking water system. Any discussion on this report? Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Your Worship, I thought at one point at the first of our term we had asked for quarterly reports rather than waiting so long, so that we can be up to date, since we are personally responsible for our water system. I believe there was a motion passed that we were going to ask.
So the clerk has indicated that is on the action list. So, but this is the annual report that has to be, by law, be presented. But it's a good reminder that we would like to see more timely updates rather than just once a year. Correct? Okay. So discussion on this motion. Councillor Fody.
Your Worship,
Uh-oh.
Thank you. I just broke a wire over here. More of a comment on the water report, that it's comforting, or it should be comforting, to the village residents here in Lansdowne to know that our water system has no negativity to it, if you will, in the sense that there was no water main breaks, and it goes on and on and on. It's a very good report, and should be a comfort zone to those that are paying their water bills. And that's exactly why you are paying. You want this comfort zone. We all know the word Walkerton, and we don't want to ever relive that anywhere. And I want to thank Aqua for the detailed report on what they did to the standpipe revitalization this past year. Rather than just put a number on it and say it's finished, they actually broke it all down piece by piece as to what all they did do. So I want to thank them for that.
Thank you, Councillor Fody. Any further discussion on the motion at hand? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, carried. Next motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Gorell, seconded by Councillor Olkey, whereas the Vessel Operating Restriction Regulations, VORR, Section 27A states no person shall operate a power-driven vessel at a speed in the excess of 10 kilometers per hour within 30 meters of shore in the following waters. A, the waters of Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, whereas flooding and high water levels of the upper St. Lawrence River and Lake Ontario present danger to infrastructure, property, and natural shorelines, and whereas reasonable support has been sought through public consultation, and whereas insufficient time exists in order to implement the full process as outlined in the VORR for the recommended updates to the existing speed zones, and whereas the Minister of Transport has the authority to issue interim orders regarding speed limits under the criteria as laid out in the Cabinet Directive on Regulation for the protection of property and safety affecting the public interests. Discussion on this motion. Councillor Gorell, do you want to speak to this?
Thank you, and through your worship, just very briefly for a change, I think it speaks for itself. We are going to have high water. These measures do matter to people who are looking for wave mitigation, and at this moment and moving quickly, it is something we can certainly ask the minister. How he responds, I wouldn't presume to know, and I hadn't thought of it, but we should also ask for TIA to perhaps support this, Thousand Island Association. Other than that, it's self-explanatory. Thank you.
I think that it goes without saying that we can easily send this along to those organizations and they can support it. I can't imagine them not supporting it, but just to keep things simple and straightforward. Further discussion on this motion as it's presented, Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Fody.
I think it's a great start, but I want to know where we are with regards to IJC and you know, if we're going to get that comfort from them coming to our township specifically. I know they're a large organization, which is Canada and the U.S., but I think they owe it to everybody along the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River to provide us the personal touch. And I would certainly look forward to hearing from them here.
We can invite them to speak to us as council, if that is what you're looking to do, which is separate from this directive, but there's no reason we can't request that. One of the things that I know that right now, there was a webinar on Friday that was put out by the IJC, which will be loaded onto our website here in short order for communication to the public. They're not a consultative organization, unfortunately. While your point is well taken, Deputy Mayor, they put information out. They don't necessarily take information in. Having said that, the waterfront mayors are meeting tomorrow afternoon to discuss next steps to get in front of the IJC again. I also understand, based on media reports and what the IJC has said, is that they're reviewing Plan 2014 in its entirety. The sad part of that is that I don't believe that's going to be a quick response. So I apologize for taking liberty with this, but it is applicable to what we're talking about. Councillor Gorell?
Just one follow-up I should have mentioned, and I really didn't make a point of it in this resolution, but this does or would give the Marine Forces some meat. That's what they asked for in the initial report. That was pointed out that it was they had no power under the not Marine Act, but under the existing rules. They had no power to bring someone to bear. This would give them something to use. Thank you.
Before you comment, Terry, I have to sincerely apologize. There was two more things to this that I did not read out. I apologize. I just flipped the page over. So I would like to read those last two paragraphs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council directs staff to petition the Federal Minister of Transport to extend the current 30-meter from shoreline speed limits to 100 meters. subject to the following on a temporary basis with reference to periods of high water and the recreational boating season. And number 2, within the defined geographic area of the Thousand Islands. And further be it resolved that staff be directed to seek support for this resolution from affected communities. So I apologize for not finishing it in its entirety. Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. This resolution would or could go a long way if it gives the OPP and other authorities the clout, if you will, to implement fines. I think we need to make that information known to the OPP that not only would we like more visibility on the water, maybe we should expect it during a high water time. I mean, I'm not a water person, but I've heard enough people that are on the water tell me how many speeding vehicles or vessels there were last year. Some people just don't care. They own a boat, they dock it, they own nothing out there on the waterfront. They got nothing to lose. I think, given the high water we have, it's bad enough that Mother Nature's doing what it's doing, or lack of, I won't even go with the IGC at this point, but with Mother Nature doing what it's doing, I think we need to make notice to the OPP that we would really like a higher presence of them being out there during busier times. Just because that, it's like OPP cruisers on the 401. There's a lot less speeders wherever they're located, and I think we need their presence and help out here to help lower the incidence of damage.
Deputy Mayor, you have a point to make?
They're the worst offenders.
Well, trying to get somewhere and knowing where your wake is another thing altogether. So the motion as it's presented, I think, is a clear and decisive way to petition the federal government to do something in the immediate need during high water. Based on the conversation, I can't imagine that it won't pass, but I will call a question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, carried. Okay. Next is the mayor's update. So I'll try to make this as quick as possible. As I said earlier, there will be a waterfront mayor's meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock in Brockville. I will report back on that meeting. Very excited to host the mayor's chat this Wednesday, the very first in Sealy's Bay. It was rescheduled from late February. It takes place at 10 a.m. till noon, and that's at the Sealy's Bay Hall. The next Rockport strategy meeting is being held Thursday from 6 until 8 this week. And please keep in mind that March break is almost upon us, so it's next week. So there'll be children running around, probably not using all of their faculties at times, free. I'm free. So please keep your eyes peeled for them. And lots of programming in and around our community. If you're looking for a way to keep your little ones busy during that time frame, there is a number of different programs that are being offered, different libraries and boys and girls clubs and those sorts of things. So if you're unsure, please call in. I'm sure that we can connect you with the right people. I'd also really like to thank Keys for hosting a job fair last week. It was very well attended, and our employee Katie Lynch was on site to recruit on behalf of TLTI, and our summer and seasonal job postings are open till the end of this week. So if you have a young person in your house who's looking for summer employment, please point them in that direction, and the opportunities are posted on the website. I would really like to personally thank the Thousand Islands Gananoque Chamber of Commerce for an absolutely wonderful event down at the Ivy for the International Women's Day. The keynote speaker was Heather Haynes, who spoke about her work in the Congo and the artwork that's come back from that and what that's created in that community. But it was a very overwhelming, it was a sold out event. Lots of different people that aren't usually at events locally. So we had a lot of people from outside that came. I was part of a panel. I was very honored to be asked to do that with some other people such as Heather Howard and Laura Lee Chason and Carolyn Harding. So it was very well attended, and they're looking for next year to be even bigger and better. And there was about 85 women there this year. So it's a long way off, but a little early recognition to Lyndhurst. I'm not sure if you've already noticed, but the village is actually making headlines. So they were top 7 in the province for having the most scheduled activities during Culture Days, and that was in September. So that is a feat in itself because of the tiny nature of Lyndhurst, but to have some of the most activities scheduled is a big deal. And I believe that was the same time as the Art Bomb Festival in Gananoque, the same weekend, those Culture Days. So we had lots of people coming to the area, and I know that they're looking to build on that next year. A reminder, the youth bursary applications are due March 31st and community grants are due April 3rd. Make sure you get your grants submitted. We've heard a lot of concerns in regards to roads lately, and the graders are out and running on the roads, but as Councillor Fody pointed out, our roads are in some dire shape. It has something to do as well with the changing climate that we're experiencing. Most people understand we didn't have a rink this year because of the freeze thaw. It does not help our roads either. There's definitely things we can be doing better, but the graders are out and getting out there and running. And then as things dry up, hopefully that will not be as difficult for them to get the roads in better shape. Also, please be aware that load restrictions are in effect. So any half loads are on right now. Also, a reminder with COVID-19, the township does not have a separate stance or action plan separate from the Lees and Grenville-Lanark County Health Unit. The health unit takes the lead on these things. We are monitoring it. We are staying on top of it, but we are taking the direction from the health unit, who has very specific instructions on how to deal with this. We are fortunate so far to not have anything in our area that I'm aware of currently at this time. But wash your hands. Soap and water goes a long way. It's the way. So, and I believe it's been proven that the hand sanitizer is not as effective as soap and water. So start scrubbing. Thank you very much to the clerk's department for overseeing the improvements here for the audio system here in the chambers. I had heard from a few residents last week in regards to the sound being much better. And we hope that the people who are watching out in TV land or computer land are enjoying the benefit of these mics. It is very nice, I must say, myself, not having to hold the button, although you do forget to turn it off sometimes. So if you have any feedback to give us on that, please do so. And hopefully Councillor Fody didn't totally ruin his microphone. We'll get that fixed. So as far as high water is concerned, it is obviously top of mind for all of us. We will be coming out with some flooding mitigation measures and some funding opportunities for people for private property. That will be coming out here shortly. And the staff are meeting tomorrow in preparation for that. New web content will be up and running here shortly, so just keep your eyes peeled. And anything that comes out of that mayor's meeting, I will ensure that I put something out as well for that. Is there anything else that we've missed? Okay. Seeing none, any notices of motion? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, just an update I'm looking forward to that the Township of Lees and Thousand Isles bring forward a municipal sign bylaw update. We had one come through here not too long ago with regards to real estate signs, commercial signs on municipal, non-commercial properties. I don't think we ever saw that, so I'm looking forward to an update. I will bring forth a notice of motion next committee of the whole.
Thank you. Any further notices of motion? Seeing none, I'll move on to number 9, announcements. Councillor Olkey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And the first thing is, my veterinarian said today that this old warhorse doesn't have a coronavirus. I may have another one. I'd like to draw attention to the survey from the library board that went out with the tax bill. Please do fill it in. Please encourage your friends, neighbors, relations, acquaintances to fill it in. Make your desires known as to what you would like to see, especially if you're living in Lyndhurst and Sealy's Bay. They will respond to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I should have had that in my mayor's update. I apologize. So please, everybody, fill out that survey if possible. Councillor Fody.
There should be a reminder, especially to the residents Rockport, about the strategic plan meeting.
It was in my mayor's update number 2. The Rockport strategy meetings being held Thursday from 6 till 8, and that's at the Rockport Hall. So please attend. Any further announcements? Seeing none. Next motion on the floor is the bylaws. So moved by Deputy Mayor Lackey, seconded by Councillor Olkey, that 3 readings and final passage be granted bylaws number 20-019, number 20-020, and number 20-021, number 20-023, and number 20-024, and that 3 readings and final passage be granted bylaw number 20-022, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands at its special meeting of council held February 19th, 2020, at its Committee of the Whole meeting held on March 2nd, 2020, and the council meeting held on March 9th, 2020. Discussion on this motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed? Carried. Next, Councillor Garrell.
I apologize for this, Mayor, but I'm not sure if we're allowed to do this. We have just approved Rockport Customs House Park. Was it not brought to us as Rockport Customs Park? And I'd like to ask someone there in the audience how that was brought to us originally.
Just hang on a second. We'll get the a point of order. That's fine. I can take that. Just ask for Ms. Goodman to pull that up. It could have been a typo, in which case then we can use the bylaw that Marnie put forward.
Thanks. Just confirming.
So, Ms. Goodman?
Sorry, I was trying to hold the button now. See, I'm new at this. The report went forward with the name Rockport Customs Park.
Okay, so it's a typo in there that should not be Rockport Customs House Park.
My apologies. If council so wishes, if it's okay that the mayor and I go ahead and sign with, I will make the amendment to reflect Rockport Customs Park.
And is that the will of council?
Well, we voted on it, so therefore do we have to rescind and then put the motion back on here with an amendment?
So it's supposed to be Rockport Customs. I think if the will of council is that it was a typo and that it should be Rockport Customs Park, and the will of council, nobody's disputing that. That's fine. Is that fine? Okay. So we'll make that change as noted. Thank you for bringing that up for clarification. Yep, she's got it here. We'll make that amendment immediately. Any further points to be made before we close the meeting? So next motion is moved by Deputy Mayor Lackey, seconded by Councillor Olkey, that council adjourn. All those in favor of the motion, please signify. All those opposed, carried.